Hey folks, here at the end of The Dragon Reborn, we are releasing a special bonus episode. This is normally a patron-only content episode, and in this one, we are in particular talking about Mesaana. Me and Patrick go into about 40 minutes of detail on our favorite evil librarian. If you'd like to hear more content like this, you can support us at patreon.com/Watt Spoilers and get access to all sorts of interesting things, as well as our very active Discord, which now has a live chat channel that you can talk, and it's been very active over the last few days of people having really interesting Wheel of Time conversations. This was originally recorded on February 3rd, 2018. Please enjoy.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
We're sitting down today to do a new type of episode. This is also Wheel of Time lore type episode, except up until now we've done, we did the Powers episode, the Talents episode, and today we're doing one of the Forsaken. So it's going to be an episode on a single character.
Yeah, so we're moving from sort of aspects of the world to more sort of narrow scope. Instead of looking chronologically, sort of take a narrower look at an individual person or place or thing and see how it works across the entire series.
Yeah, we thought it would be interesting. And, some of the Forsaken will be more interesting than others. Like Ishmael, I don't even know how we're going to do that episode. We might have to separate it into Ishmael, Moradin. But we'll worry about that when we got to it, which is why for the first one I picked Mesaana, because it's a shorter, simpler story. But also there's some good, interesting stuff in here.
And I find the more I look into each of the Forsaken, the more varied and interesting I find even the shallowest of the Forsaken to be.
That's true. I might be speaking too soon, because even for some of the characters that have less going on, I make fun of Agenor sometimes, but Agenor invented Trollocs. That's kind of huge.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then he gets to become a whole nother person, which you always forget about.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So back to Mesaana, which we are saying Mesaana?
Yeah, I've always gone with Mesaana.
Because I know in the audiobooks there's a little while where Kate says Mesaana. She adds an extra A in there because there are two A's in the name.
I feel like if Jordan wanted that, he would have given us the old tongue apostrophe.
Agreed. And the pronunciation key says Mesaana.
Right, like Belal.
Yeah.
That apostrophe. So I started off, Mesaana is the name she earns after converting to the dark from Sain Terrasind. And that's sort of notable because Mesaana is one of the few Forsaken. She may be the only Forsaken who never earned a third name.
Is she the only one?
And later in the series, we see her as an Aes Sedai named Danelle.
Mm-hmm. And in general, just personality-wise, I sort of think of her as an evil librarian.
I was just saying that, and seriously, if you scroll back a little.
Oh, I didn't read that. No, not at all.
And yeah, and one of the more popular fan arts of her, she's even wearing a sweater vest. It's pretty perfect.
Then she would be a representation of the black-brown Aja?
Yeah. Danelle was a brown before Mesaana took over her appearance, I suppose. She must have killed Danelle at some point and took all that over. Also, Mesaana was a teacher at the Column Dawn in the Age of Legends. She was below the bracket where you earn a third name as a researcher, like Lanfear was. I'm getting a little, well, it doesn't really matter where we break into the notes here, but
yeah, let's talk about what she was like during the Age of Legends, and then we can start looking into Third Age.
During the Age of Legends, Sain Terrasind at the time was a teacher at Column Dawn, the same university where Lanfear worked as a researcher and eventually drilled the bore. And I thought it was notable, I think, we see Grendel talking about this, that she felt scorned by having been passed over for a research position and instead was assigned a simple instructor's position.
Now, I don't know if you've ever been involved in academia.
I have not.
But I entirely believe that someone would turn to the dark for being passed over for a position in academia they thought they deserved. That, to me, is like some of the most bitter people I have ever met have existed in that realm.
I guess I'll lecture to students for the rest of my life.
Totally.
I have a quote from the Gathering Storm prologue. Sometimes Grandal thought Mesaana had gone over to the Shadow simply because it offered a more interesting opportunity for research.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she's an ultimate evil brown.
Yeah, that's a great description.
And she's super powerful. She's one, up there.
Yeah, whenever I look, there's various interpretations, but at the different sources say approximately somewhere between Nynaeve on the low side and Lanfear on the high side. And we've debated about Lanfear's power, and Nynaeve has different levels of power throughout the series, but she's way up there with those two.
That's sort of the range of Forsaken, I think, because when Nynaeve fights Moghedien, they're pretty equally matched.
Yeah, doesn't Nynaeve like by a hair overpower Moghedien with just the sheer force?
Exactly. Yeah, when they're basically going shield against shield.
Yeah,
and they're evenly matched until Nynaeve distracts her with she throws something at her.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
And Nynaeve at that point is probably still not done getting stronger.
What a third age move. You know what I mean?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, totally. Yeah. From an age when using the power wasn't natural for everybody. And
yeah,
you're used to throwing. I mean, Nynaeve throws that fist a couple of times.
All this power and a rock to the face.
Yeah. Which is kind of distracting.
I mean, yes.
Yeah, totally. Still, that scene would be great on TV. It's the two of them staring at each other in a museum.
And then Nynaeve eventually picks something up and throws it.
And then the other one collapses. I mean, that's one of those scenes where I want it to be like half CGI, half not CGI. So you sort of flip to this massive battle, things going back and forth, clashing in the air, and then you flip back to an old guy with a broom squeaks by them, is like, "Excuse me."
Appropriate, yes.
So she ends up running the schools for the dark, basically the evil schools.
Yeah, I have. During the War of Power, Mesaana was known to be an adequate, in quotes, someone said that at some point, battlefield general.
Which means terrible.
But she relished being some kind of governor, I suppose this is how it worked, where different chosen were assigned parts of the world that had been conquered. In regions under her control, all children were sent to attend schools instructing praise for the Dark One. Slow learners were punished by death. These students were instructed to spy on their parents and each other. She used them to carry out executions, mainly of previously well-known academics, to destroy museums and any reminders of the previous age, and always to praise the Shadow. And I think there's a few references throughout the book that during the breaking, roving bands of looters and criminals were sometimes called Mesaana's children, like Mesaana had taught the children in the territory she governed. And I saw in a couple of different forums and fan community places where people always want to bring up the Cultural Revolution, like Mao's Cultural Revolution, where young people were instructed to, this is the new way things are going to be done, and everything before that has to be wiped away.
I kind of think of it as if Dolores Umbridge had ultimate power over a country from Harry Potter.
I feel like I should throw in her appearance. Mesaana is described as tall. She has big blue eyes, chin-length dark hair, and a voice that sounds like chimes. I think we see that a couple of times in the books. And she sometimes appears to dark friends as a shadow, dressed in black and white, with lips and eyes of silver.
And that's definitely with a Mask of Mirrors.
Yeah, we see that a bunch in Crossroads of Twilight. When she appears to Alviarin, a few times she appears as the dark spirit thing.
And doesn't Alviarin catch a glimpse of her robe as bronze or something like that?
I think that's right.
Yeah, it sneaks through. So that was one of our clues that she was in the brown.
And during the Age of Legends, she was described as middle-aged at around 300 years old. After she was released from the Boar, sometime around 998, New Era, we know that Mesaana works to plant herself in the White Tower. She initially planned to use this position to capture and when the tower sends a delegation to meet him. But she probably had something to do with the box.
Yeah, well, she had a lot to do with all of the Black Ajah activities in the White Tower during the entire sequence.
Yeah. So I attribute also a lot of Elida's seemingly crazy plans to interference by Mesaana, Denel, who are both Mesaana, and Mesaana's strings on people like Alviarin, important people. Shiriam, probably.
Absolutely. And Mesaana was at the meeting to let the Lord of Chaos rule. So a lot of what she's doing is just trying to disrupt existing structures, break down the White Tower, cause chaos, cause dissension.
And definitely the White Tower split.
Right. And she was a big part of that White Tower split. I mean, as Danielle, she was one of the sisters who voted to still Suan Sanche. And we know that was an absolute minimum.
Yeah.
So, without her vote, without one of the Forsaken votes, Suan would not have been deposed and stilled. Not to mention some of the Black Ajah that were present.
I also thought it was notable around that time in Lord of Chaos, this is after Ravin's death, Mesaana visits Shale Ghul twice, but only finds Shaidar Haran, who remains silent. So there's just a couple of strange scenes where she visits and nothing happens. I don't know what that's all about, but I thought it was notable. Or I guess at the time we just hear an unusually tall Myrddraal.
Right.
Who will not speak to Mesaana.
Yeah, I never really understood those scenes. Like, why?
Me neither.
Why did she go? Why was she summoned? Was she just being monitored? It seems like she's very successful in the White Tower. She's able to break it apart. She sends the Black Ajah to do her bidding. She sends them out basically to Tanshiko to find the domination bracelets.
Yeah.
She's basically the one who's responsible for putting Rand in a box.
Yeah, she was present during the Let the Lord of Chaos Rule order.
Mm-hmm.
She was there with Simmerhog, Grandal, Demandred.
She's also, isn't she allied with Balal in the Stone of Tyr when he's basically trying to get Rand to pull Kalendor?
Yeah,
stone?
She's the one that escapes alive, I think.
Mm-hmm. So I think
and Balal's Balefired.
Right.
Just Moraine
just is like, hey, you, Balefire.
And I think it's somewhere shortly after the Stone of Tyr plot that she takes Denel's body. I'm probably saying that wrong. Kills Denel and takes over her place in the tower.
I think it's long before then.
Long before that?
I think Denel is in there. She is Denel during Suan Sanche's deposition. She is, I don't think we ever see the actual Denel in the series. I think from the very beginning, the first time we see her, she's been captured, tortured, and killed by Mesaana in order to get information out of Denel. And then she took her place. I
like it. And Denel's powerful enough Aes Sedai that she's relevant in a room full of Aes Sedai, but doesn't have enough friends that anyone would notice the difference. Because she's a Brown, she's noted as someone who I think was raised to Aes Sedai and just leaves and studies things and comes back very occasionally, but doesn't have a lot of close connections. She's sort of kind of the perfect person.
The typical dreamy Brown.
Yeah.
And never really made any close connections. She's powerful enough and similar enough in features that Mesaana found her just a perfect target.
And she uses that position in the tower to keep tabs specifically on Alviarin. There's at least one major chapter, I think there's a few, where Mesaana visits Alviarin. Yeah, there's a few.
There's definitely a few.
Mesaana gives her that red rod to call her at any given time if something goes wrong with the plans.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot that she did have a way of calling her.
She knows when Alviarin leaves out information regarding Elida in one scene, meaning Mesaana is most likely eavesdropping on the comings and goings of the Emerald Seat and other powerful Aes Sedai all of the time.
She has a few abilities the other Aes Sedai don't. Notably, the ability to invert her weaves so she can channel and no one else knows it.
She can do the eavesdropping.
The ability to mask her strength.
Oh, yeah.
So that they don't know just how strong she is. And then, of course, just the ability to travel, so she can, like, go into her room and, like, go hang out somewhere else or have meetings in Shale Ghul or whatever.
Yeah.
And then pop right back in. So those, you can be a pretty amazing spy when you can come and go undetected and completely hide who you are.
She teaches Alviarin how to make gateways at one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the rebels do all they can to prevent knowledge of the gateways from getting into the tower. But the reality is someone's in there who already knows how to make them. And as soon as it's convenient, she teaches it to all the Black Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
Once that knowledge is out, she has no reason not to. In the beginning, it's definitely useful, like, keep the Forsaken knowledge among the Forsaken.
Mm-hmm.
Because that makes you gods among men.
Right.
But once your enemies have gateways, well, then your allies should have them too. And so the rebels' use of gateways pretty much forced, I believe, Mesaana to teach them to Alviarin and the rest of the Black Aja.
Makes sense. So they don't lose that one up. Exactly. Or at least they can match. And then in Crossroads of Twilight, there's this crazy scene involving Mesaana and Shadar Haran. It's after Alviarin thinks that she's been discovered by Elaida as a Black Aja member, and she, like, runs to her rooms, and she uses this Terangrial, or whatever the red rod is, that Mesaana gave her to call her. Mm-hmm. And Mesaana shows up right away. Mesaana goes about, she's going to punish Alviarin, and Shadar Haran shows up in the middle of this. I think Shadar Haran tracks down Mesaana because Mesaana was called to the Battle of Shadar Logoth and didn't go.
Why didn't Mesaana go to the battle? Was it just a cowardice thing?
I think so.
It was just she sensed how much power was coming from the Choden Call and said, I'm just not going to mess with that.
Yeah. She has her own thing going on, and I think she believes that she's well hidden.
And she doesn't seem to really be a warrior. She's not a fighter.
No, she's much more a manipulator.
Right. So when the call to fight is there, she just doesn't bother showing up.
I think so.
And so then that really pisses off the Dark One, and so he shows up. Or
Shadar Haran, at least.
The hand of the shadow, which, what's the shadow? What's the hand of, if
yeah.
I think of Shadar Haran as a glove, and the Dark One has his hand in there, and he's the one twitching the fingers.
Totally.
It looks like Fade. It talks like a Dark One.
Shadar Haran tries to confront Mesaana, and she says, "Who are you to challenge one of the Chosen?" believing he's just a regular Myrddraal. And Shadar Haran says, "Do you think Hand of the Shadow is just a name?" The Myrddraal's voice no longer grated. Hollow, it seemed to boom down caverns from some unimaginable distance. The creature grew as it spoke, swelling in size, till his head brushed the ceiling. Over 2 spans up. "You were summoned, and you did not come. My hand reaches far, Mesaana." And I think you're right. I think that's the Dark One talking.
Mm-hmm.
My hand reaches far, meaning I've sent this Myrddraal as my hand.
Exactly.
And I'm speaking through it.
Exactly. Well, and the size change, again, reminds me a bit of the Dark One. Like, we see him, like the shadow swelling up behind Ishamael in the dream world in the chapter we just talked about.
Yeah. Who is it that's following Shadar Haran into Shale Ghul that the walls scrape his head?
I want to say Samuel.
Is it
Samuel?
Yeah. But it doesn't scrape Shadar Haran's head, who's taller.
Yes.
Warping of reality.
So, and just the changing of size of characters and height of characters, right? Like, again, Jordan loves tall characters are more powerful. And here he has a character who can change height.
I like that. Creepy and powerful.
Very creepy.
Shaking visibly, the Chosen opened her mouth, perhaps to plead, but suddenly black fire flashed around her, and she screamed as her clothing fell away in dust. And this is kind of a famous scene that people debate about a lot. Bands of black flame bound her arms and to her sides, wrapped tight around her legs, and a seething ball of black appeared in her mouth, forcing her jaws wide. She writhed there, standing naked and helpless. "Do you want to know why one of the Chosen must be punished? Do you want to watch?" it asked. Alviarin.
I mean, this is He strips her naked, puts a ball gag in her mouth, and says it's time for you to be punished.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a not that heavily masked rape scene.
No, great lord, Alviarin manages, with a mouth dry as dust. She knew it could not be, but she knew. Tears were rolling down her cheeks, she realized. The Murderer smiled again. Many have fallen from great heights for wanting to know too much.
Stay on Mesaana. She has failed the Dark One. He expressed his desire to have them fight, and she disobeyed him directly.
I think it's a reflection of the Dark and how the Dark One would handle this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It flowed toward her. No, not it. The Great Lord, clothed in the skin of a Murtral. And this is when Shadar-Haran marks Alviarin as his.
And this goes back to satanic rituals and sex with the devil and a lot of those sort of ritualistic things that happen sort of in satanic cults.
Shadar-Haran says, Mesaana will not harm you now, unless I give her permission. You will find who threatens my creatures here, and deliver them to me. And then it gets creepier. I might skip that part.
I think Alviarin may have been set up to become Forsaken at one point. You know?
Yeah?
That she has the potential to be elevated. She has the power. She has the ambition. I don't think she ever succeeds, but, you know, I think Shadar-Haran is basically saying, you know, you have an opportunity here. I'm knocking Mesaana down a peg or two. You have the potential to take her place. You know, kind of like we see Mazarim Tain becomes Forsaken for delivering a tower full of channelers to the Dark One. If Alviarin was able to accomplish the same thing, I can see how she would also be elevated.
Is Shadar-Haran tasking Alviarin with hunting the Black Aja hunters? When he says, you will find who threatens my creatures here and deliver them to me. Nuke Juice is asking if this is the most disturbing scene in the series. It's one of them.
It's up there. I honestly think some of the Soul Catcher scenes are pretty disturbing.
Oh, yeah. That, honestly, I think might have freaked me out more. The Soul Trap?
Yeah.
That's with Grandal.
The Mind Trap.
Mind Trap, that's what it's called.
Because we know he's got two. He's got...
It's Moghedien. I think it's Moghedien that there's a really a creepy punishment moment.
I know he had Moghedien Sidene. I thought Grendel got one too. Wasn't she punished? Oh no, she was just killed. That's right. She was killed and put into an ugly body. That was her punishment.
Moghedien and Sindane are both mind trapped.
Yeah. Because I knew he had two. I just couldn't remember which two.
I'm pretty sure there's a very creepy scene involving both those characters.
Yeah.
The darkness of it seemed to drink the light from the room. Mesaana began to thrash in her bonds, keening shrilly past the gag in her mouth. And that's the end of the chapter. In, what did I say, LOC?
Lord of Chaos, yeah. And, you know, I mean, that's typical Jordan where a lot is implied and almost nothing is shown.
Right. She could have just been tortured. We don't know.
Yeah. He could have punched her in the face a few times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, I'll just read the rest of this. You will find who threatens my creatures here and deliver them to me. He turned away from her, and the dark armor fell from his body. She was startled when it hit the carpeted floor tiles with a crash of steel, rather than simply vanishing. He was clothed in black, and she could not have said whether it was silk or leather or something else. The darkness of it seemed to drink the light from the room. Mesaana began to thrash in her bonds, keening shrilly past the gag in her mouth. Go now, he said, if you wish to live another hour. The sound coming from Mesaana rose to a despairing scream.
So he's basically in a Gimp's outfit.
Yes.
And it is one of the more disturbing scenes of the series. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Except maybe the Mind Trap series, Mind Trap plots. I'm trying to think of anything else that's even more horrifying. I mean, I guess, piles of dead villagers is maybe...
I honestly think being used to quench Murdral's blade sounds absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
And of course, Adom, Soldam, and Domine, I think that's terrifying. Being a slave for the rest of your life.
Yeah. No way out.
No way out. The ability to make someone make you experience any physical sensation at any time. Like, horrifying. I mean, there's a lot of horrifying things that happens.
Yeah.
Hell, just being told you're a male channeler.
To go insane and have your flesh ride off you while you kill everyone around you.
Right.
That's your fate. There's a lot of darkness in the Wheel of Time that, I mean, we get at it.
Or if you're an Aiel male
podcast,
channeler,
but
you go up into the waste and you're like, I'm going to slay the Dark One. And they're like, yeah, no, you're going to serve the Dark One. Sorry.
yeah. And then if you're really good, they sharpen your teeth.
Yeah. Isn't that if you can channel? No, see,
I thought it was like a rank system.
It is. But as far as I can tell, there's three kinds of Aiel. The ones who are turned to the dark side. And they have to be channelers to be turned.
Right.
There are those...
Non-channelers can't be turned.
Right. There are just Dark Friend Aiel who are in the town. And then there are Dark Friend channelers who have not been turned. And I think the ones who have their teeth filed are turned channelers.
Oh. I never picked that up, but I'm going to believe it.
My only question is, are the ones... It doesn't just mean a channeler. Like the ones with... If you're not turned, you don't get filed teeth. And so but basically, this whole split has been engineered... Of the White Tower was engineered by Mesaana. And she's been doing her best in order to make it as bad as possible.
Yes.
So, like, Elida's orders that no one can approach the Dragon Reborn unless it's through the White Tower. Her orders that, you have to return to the tower or you'll be a traitor.
Also, I forgot to mention this, but as Danelle, Mesaana hires Elida's Masons who turn out to be soldiers during the battle that starts the split in the White Tower.
That's right.
The battle to capture Suan and her loyalists.
That a lot of the soldiers in there that
were imported by Mesaana
Totally.
as Danelle.
Totally.
I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
But that's a big one. Her engineering of the split in the White Tower. I mean, that's huge. A huge plot line in the series.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, she's there. I think she's making Alviarin have the Whites support Elida.
And kind of engineer the mistrust, I think, from the very beginning.
Absolutely. Suan wants to yell at Danielle for spending too much money on these workers.
Masons.
These Masons.
I think that's what they...
And they're, like, not doing their job. And she's, like, plans... because Suan's, like, reviewing all the little stuff. And so if you know that it's Danielle, who is also Mesaana, then you know that these... workers were brought in by Mesaana. And so then you start thinking about it and you realize that a lot of the fighters, they must have been something else. And it turns out they were fighters and mercenaries.
Yeah, they're mercenaries.
During the Battle of the White Tower.
Maybe Dark Friend mercenaries.
That's my assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to go through a character like this because we don't have to wait to get to the spoilers.
Yeah.
We can just call out all the spoilers for that character in one go.
And then I have a couple more things that I tried to keep in chronological order, although we've been jumping around already, so it doesn't matter too much. Mesaana is summoned to the Blight, I think for the third time. Oh, this is in the World of Dreams, to meet with Moradin and Demandred, and is forbidden by Moradin to execute the rescue of Semerhag. Semerhag? Is that how I say
Semerhag.
that? Semerhag.
The H is silent.
From Rand.
She's been in a ally pact aid situation with Semerhag for a while.
Yeah.
And so now that Semerhag is captured, she sort of thinks it's her almost duty. She feels honor bound almost, I'd say, to go try and rescue her.
I believe it's Semerhag, I want to say Demandred and Mesaana.
Mm-hmm. It makes a lot of sense if you think about it, that Semerhag is out with the Shan-Chan, and they're way out on one side of the continent.
Yeah.
And then Demandred is dealing in Shara, which is on the other side of the continent, and Mesaana is centrally located. So it seems like, the alliance between them is very geographically separated, but each of them is generating their own army and forces to bring into the last battle.
All simultaneously.
Yeah.
While Mesaana sort of destroys and captures the White Tower. Demandred is taking over an entire society in Shara, and Semerhog is manipulating the Shanchan.
Right. Now, if Semerhog hadn't fallen, the Shanchan would still have been enemies.
Yeah, very likely. That's a good point. I never really thought about it.
Yeah, huge important part. And if Egwene hadn't reunited the White Tower would have either been broken or, totally useless, or, easily broken by the Black Ajah. She was able to purge a good chunk of the Black Ajah.
So it's sort of Moradin's fault here, who's offended that Semerhog had attacked Rand and therefore Moradin. So he angrily refuses the rescue of Semerhog.
Well, but she fails, and I think...
She fails, but she also blows Rand's hand off.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of the split in the Black Tower and how Egwene is able to fix it, how do you think Mesaana avoids getting caught up in the re-swearing of the Three Oaths?
That's tough to say. She either escapes and isn't there, or she has some way around the Oath Rod.
She's in the White Tower the whole time, and then Egwene breaks her mind, and then they find her after her mind is broken.
That's how they find out that it's Danelle.
But
until then, we really don't know.
Yeah, but Danelle's there the whole time.
And Varen hypothesizes at some point that Mesaana's in the White Tower. She just doesn't know who it is. Mm-hmm. It's also possible that Mesaana never killed Danelle, and she's imprisoned somewhere.
I doubt that.
Yeah.
I think she killed and tortured her to death for information. She wouldn't have left a living evidence around, and the companion says she's dead.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think she probably just found some way around it. Especially considering that she can just disappear from a room. Traveling isn't really well known at the time in the books. She could have just evaded.
Yeah, and even in the books, they come up with a few methods that a Forsaken could have used. So it sounds like different words, even though she's saying certain words. Or there's a whole bunch of, even Elaine comes up with a bunch of ways to avoid swearing the oaths. And so it's very possible that she had a clever way of avoiding it, or just didn't show up.
Oh, Aradia has a great point. She can swear that she's not a dark friend under oath and not be lying because she's not a dark friend. She's a chosen.
Right. She's Forsaken.
I saw that somewhere, but yeah, that's probably one of the better theories.
Yeah. No, that's in your notes.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I laid out a couple of options here. I just hadn't even read that far.
In an attempt to root out Mesaana, doesn't Egwene set up a meeting where she's basically baiting her to attack them?
Our favorite character messes it up. Doesn't she scold Gawain?
Oh, yeah, of course, Gawain. Well, that's the first trap she lays for her.
I don't remember that whole plot that well.
Egwene is in her bedroom, and she's Gawain sneaks in, and she's got all these traps laid, and they totally snag him and capture him, and she's like, you set off the trap, and now she knows there was a trap, so you screwed it all up.
Yeah.
And so she has to go to her backup plan, which is, I think, holding a meeting in Tel Riyadh, and Mesaana shows up basically to take her out. And then the Dream Spike shows up, and we're talking about last battle chaos going on. But the Dream Spike, and that's why Grendel is blamed for Mesaana's death, because of the Dream Spike. Because the Dream Spike was given to Grendel, she gave it to Slayer, and then Perrin takes it to the White Tower. And that results in, Mesaana was supposed to walk into the trap and then have them follow her, and they were supposed to retreat to more favorable conditions where they had a trap laid, but she couldn't get out because of the Dream Spike. And so Mesaana's plan failed.
A happy accident.
Oh, totally. Well, I think of it as Taviran coincidence helps explain that.
The only notable thing I have before that is when Mesaana orders Shiriam to depose Egwene and steal all the Dream Terangrial, and Shiriam returns with all but one of the Terangrial. So Mesaana allows her to keep all but one of her fingers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because then she's like, oh, yeah, I shut it in a door or something. And it's like, yeah, there's no finger there.
I shut it in a door. I don't remember what she says, but yeah. I didn't even actually remember that part until I was doing research for this.
It's some really lame excuse. Yeah, there's a whole scene, all the scenes where Shiriam's crying and losing weight and gaining weight, and like she's got some weirdness going on. She's being punished by Mesaana.
Yeah.
For basically not doing a good job. But so that whole battle in Tel Riyadh results in a confrontation between Egwene and Mesaana in the world of dreams.
Yeah, the battle in the White Tower in Tel Riyadh.
Mm-hmm. First of all, Egwene uses her ability in Tel Riyadh to dismiss the Adom as nothing, which is she totally beats. You know how Moghedien's captured?
Yeah.
Egwene just beats that, which is kind of an awesome scene.
That's right. Who slips the Adom on her?
Mesaana.
Yeah,
Mesaana puts the Adom on her, and Egwene's like, yeah, whatever. Now it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that shows her mastery over Moghedien in a heartbeat, because Moghedien could have done that if she had an opportunity.
Even that she thought to use it on Egwene in Teleran Riyadh just shows that Egwene's on another level.
I am the Amerlin, Egwene said, an Amerlin to children. An Amerlin to a tower that has stood for thousands of years, Egwene said. Thousands of years of trouble and chaos, yet most of your life you lived in a time of peace, not strife. Curious you should think yourself so strong when much of your life was so easy. Easy, Mesaana said, you know nothing. Neither broke her gaze. Egwene felt something press against her as it had before. Mesaana's will, demanding her subservience, her supplication, an attempt to use Teleran Riyadh to change the very way that Egwene thought. Mesaana was strong, but strength in this place was a matter of perspective. Mesaana's will pressed against her, but Egwene had defeated the Adom. She could resist this. You will bend, Mesaana said quietly. You are mistaken, Egwene replied, voice tense. This is not about me, Egwene Alver is a child, but the Amerlin is not. I may be young, but the seat is ancient. Neither woman looked away. I'm skipping a little bit. Age is irrelevant, Egwene said. To an extent, even experience is irrelevant. This place is about what a person is. The Amerlin seat is the White Tower, and the White Tower will not bend. It defies you, Mesaana, and your lies. Sweat trickled down Egwene's temples. Every muscle in her body tensed as she pushed back against Mesaana's will. And Egwene knew that this woman, this creature, was an insignificant insect shoving against an enormous mountain. That mountain would not move. Indeed, shove against it too hard, and something snapped softly in the room. Egwene breathed in with a gasp as the air returned to normal. Mesaana dropped like a doll made of strips of cloth. She hit the ground with her eyes still open, and a little bit of spittle dribbled from the corner of her mouth.
It's badass.
Yeah. And so that's the end of Mesaana. I keep saying Mesaana, like the Mesaana.
Mesaana. And later they find who they thought was Danelle as a sort of...
just an idiot.
Vegetable. I forget what they describe her as, a husk.
Yeah, and I wonder if that would... I assume that doesn't affect her through a rebirth?
No, I have a little part about that as the end, that this is probably the best way to have destroyed one of the Forsaken, because her body is still alive, her soul is still in it. So she can't be reanimated unless she's killed. Like, her soul can't be put into another body.
Sure.
It's just that her mind is broken. So she's, useless for the rest of the last battle, but useless forever.
And she
or for the rest of her, for the rest of the time that her body lives.
I have a question. Do you think that if she was placed into a new body, I think if she was placed into a new body, her mind would still be broken. I think she has to be reborn. I think she has to become a new person. I think Mesaana's mind is broken forever, and that killing her and resurrecting her wouldn't do you any good. In the way that, like, Lanfear is, even though she's in Saidin's body, she's still Lanfear. And so I think that if her mind is broken, that's going to stay with her.
Couldn't say. Certainly a badass way to defeat one of the Forsaken.
But if you have, in the same way that, like, Lewis Theron was insane, but Rand is not. And I know that's not necessarily a great analogy because Lewis Theron was healed before he was killed, so don't yell at me before I correct myself there. But I think even if Lewis Theron had died insane, Rand al'Thor would have still been born sane.
Yeah.
But if you'd had Lewis Theron, if he died insane and then the Dark One had stuck him in another body, he
You
still
know-
would have been an insane Lewis Theron.
That's a good point, because when Ishmael is put into Moradin's body, he doesn't really seem less insane.
No, he's still pretty insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is where we start to differentiate between the mind, the body, the soul, the spirit, and like the way they sort of work differently, because
Yeah.
certainly the spirit goes to Teleron Riyadh
Right.
and exists there, like with the Heroes of the Horn. But then you're reborn as a different person each time, and that person has a mind and a body, which
A
is
new
different.
mind.
A new mind and a new body.
Whereas if, like, Lanfear, say, you don't go through that process, and the Dark One takes your soul out of the circular process of rebirth and inserts it into a new body, you still have your old memories.
Exactly.
You're still the same person. You're just in a new body.
Yeah.
You don't get the reboot that is a rebirth.
Right. Yeah, you don't get a new mind.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point, is you don't get a new mind. You do get a new body. So it's like a half rebirth. New body, but not a new mind. Same soul.
Right.
So mind, body, soul.
Yeah.
You know, as far as I can tell.
That's a thing I never
really.
really realized before. I'm glad we just came to that.
And channeling, the ability to channel seems to be not with the body and not with the mind, but with the soul.
Yeah. Because it follows rebirth to rebirth.
Right.
The ability to channel.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?